today's webinar in our series, The World Sings, Series 2. My name is Michael Cannon, and I am the Executive Director of the Hymn Society in the United States and Canada. And it's my great pleasure and honor today to be welcoming Jo-Ann Richards Goffe, who's going to present a webinar called Revival, Reggae Nyabinghi. And she taught me how to say that word just a few moments ago. And I see we have some good people here watching in real time. And Gerardo, I know you're here, and we were just talking about you right before we came on the air. I just want to say a few words about Jo-Ann. She is a Christian cultural advocate who's an author, speaker, singer, songwriter, and ethnodoxologist. I love that term, an ethnodoxologist. She has devoted much of her work to culturally relevant expressions of worship, and especially in song. She's worked in various countries during her time to guide people in writing new songs that reflect worship that is culturally relevant in their own languages, especially in West Africa. In Jamaica, Jo-Ann is becoming increasingly popular for reading from the Jamaican New Testament and singing her original worship songs in the Jamaican language and musical genres. She also recently served as head of the music and media department at Jamaica Theological Seminary, where she still serves as a part-time lecturer. So she's got a rich body of experience to share with us today. I'm really excited that she's with us. If you would like to make comments or ask questions, you can use the chat feature for your comments and the Q&A feature for your questions. And at the end of Jo-Ann's presentation, Brian Hain will appear on your screen, and he will moderate those questions and explore a little more following the presentation. So thanks for being with us, Jo-Ann. Thank you for being with us. And we're anxious to hear you.
Wonderful. It is my pleasure and privilege to be here to share with this team, with this group of wonderful people who come here on a regular basis, it seems, to hear what God is doing around the world with regard to music and congregational music in particular. So yes, greetings from Kingston, Jamaica, where the temperature is warm and where our hearts are warm and the music is often hot. So I want to thank Brian, who is going to be helping me through this presentation. He's going to be running my slideshow for me. Thank you so much, Brian. And let me just jump right in. So the title, first of all, has been adjusted. It's Mento, Reggae, Nyabinghi, and Revival, Congregational Music for the Jamaican Soul. Now, Jamaica's reggae music was inscribed on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2018. Is it on the list of genres that are being used in Jamaican congregations? Do Jamaican worshippers instinctively respond to it as they connect with God? If not, what is the heart music of the Jamaican worshipper? Now, before I proceed, I need to make a declaration of what this presentation is not about. It is not about the history of Jamaican music, although it will contain some history. Neither is it a concert filled with performances of Jamaican music, although there will be some singing, a little. Although I do have a second degree in ethnomusicology, I will not be analyzing the music in detail for the musicological mind. Instead, here is what I'll be doing. I'll be sharing my own experiences as a Jamaican involved in the evangelical church as a singer, songwriter, pianist, worship leader, and choir director as I journey to discover what really is the heart music of the Jamaican worshiper. And for those who do not know or have never heard this, Jamaica is said to have the most churches per square mile in the world. And I was Traveling in my car listening to the radio, I heard them refer to 4,000 congregations across the island. I don't know, it could be more. So, my purpose for sharing this knowledge with you is so that you will gain valuable insight into the current worship contexts of Jamaica and into the hearts and minds of Jamaican people. And that with greater understanding, you'll be better equipped to reach the soul of the Jamaicans in your congregations and in your communities. And I was just wondering, you know, if there's any Jamaican in the room, or if there is anyone who is reaching out, has Jamaicans in their congregations or in your communities in which you are serving. So just throwing that out there. And please know that I am reading my script for the most part because I don't want to get off track, which I can easily do. So I will begin my presentation with this story to demonstrate how things have changed over time. I would perhaps have been in primary, what we call primary, what you probably may call elementary school, when I learned this song. Mine, mine, Jesus is mine. Mine when I'm weary, mine when I'm dreary. Mine, mine, Jesus is mine. Jesus alone is mine. Now, by the time I got to high school, apparently one of the singers of this song concluded that as it was being performed, the song was not reflecting that Jesus was theirs musically. So they changed the rhythm, adding some syncopation. So the song became, mine, 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 Jesus is mine. Mine when I'm weary. Yeah. So you get the picture. Eventually, and I'm not sure how much later this was, but let's say I was either in college or had just started my teaching career. Someone decided that the song was not reflecting that Jesus was theirs linguistically. So the song then became, Fimi, 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 Jesus a Fimi. Fimi when me weary, Fimi when me dreary. And to be honest, this story is not just about the progression of people around me. It's about me and my own self-discovery. Notice that when I sang that last iteration of the song, I also lowered my register, lowered the pitch. Over time, I was discovering that I had two different voices. Hopefully, each of them was authentic. In my early years, I was being raised to be the consummate British-mannered Jamaican, producing sounds, both spoken and sung, in the manner that would make the British and my parents proud. The rounded pronunciations, singing style, and especially the high-pitched notes demonstrated this. Eventually, I found my African side, which not only included broader tones, but lower pitches. I think I'm representative of Jamaica, as there is more than one representation of our people. We truly cannot be put into a box. Now, the idea for this topic has been like a bee in my bonnet for a number of years. In 2019, I attended the conference on Christian congregational music, local and global perspectives at Ripon College, Cuddesdon in the UK. On the first day, there was a lecture demonstration entitled How We Got Over. Congregational music from the One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism ecumenical hymnal, and that was led by James Abington, a well-known African-American worship leader and songwriter. The presentation was about African-American gospel music and required the singing participation of the audience. It was very enjoyable, but I couldn't help but notice that the African Americans in the audience were more than just enjoying themselves. Their souls were obviously connecting in a way that the rest of us were not. It was as if they had entered a world that was uniquely theirs. That experience led me to ask the question, what music genre has that same effect on the Jamaican people that gospel music has on African American people? Pondering this question led me to the topic of discussion here. Yes. To be honest, I started the research the minute my brain began to wrap itself around the question and to seek an answer. So I went to the place where we all go to get answers to the deep questions of life: social media. I put the question to my Facebook friends: what music connects most deeply to the Jamaican soul in the same way that African American gospel music connects with the African American soul? These three genres were presented by the respondents then. This is 2019: reggae, revival, and Nyabinghi. And it was really a toss-up between the reggae and the revival. Nyabinghi was trailing behind, but it was there. As I explored further in preparing for this webinar, mento was raised as a viable option as well, so it was included in the survey. And this is why we have the 4 genres noted in the title. So take a breath. Let me pause here to inform you that I will be inviting you towards the end of the presentation to complete a brief questionnaire so that I will have an idea of the effectiveness of the presentation. So all persons who complete the survey will receive a link to the MP3 file for one of the songs from my most recent album, Come Make We Worship 2, The Revelation, as a thank you gift. So be prepared. This is just to let you know in advance. So here is how we will proceed. First, I will give a brief overview of each of the genres mentioned. I will then give details about the surveys conducted and discuss findings to arrive at conclusions. I'm really looking forward to your input there as well. So please don't run off and leave me. We need to talk. Most of you are probably outsiders and may observe things that an insider like me may overlook. Yeah, so now, although reggae is the most popular Jamaican music genre, it is not the only genre in Jamaica. In fact, it was being said that Jamaica has given to the world 8 music genres. Dancehall, yes, here it is: mento, ska, rocksteady, reggae, nyabinghi, dub, dancehall, and EDM, which is electronic dance music, I am told. So missing from this list is revival. Now, one Jamaican gospel singer discovered this the hard way, as his work permit visa application to the United States was denied because the genre was not recognized. So he put in the work and will go down in history as the one who successfully lobbied for its addition in 2014. So initially, as I said, the paper was limited to 3 genres, but upon the suggestion of an experienced worship leader, that's what happened. When I sent her the survey, she said, what about mento? For me, it's mento. So we added it. And our first mission then is to identify the origins and distinctive elements of each of these genres. So mento is the first. It's primarily traditional folk music coming from the days of slavery. It came into prominence in the 1940s and 50s when recording became an available technology. Mento is a fusion of African rhythms and European melodies and other musical elements. It can be recognized by its acoustic instrumentation and is often used for social commentaries, everyday life issues, and to tell stories. Instruments include the banjo, the acoustic guitar, the hand drum, and sometimes repurposed kitchen items like a grater and a knife or fork. The bass is provided by the rumba box, which is like a large mbira or thumb piano, which the musician sits on to play. Now, although mento is considered by many to be outdated, it still appears to be the genre of choice when celebrating the nation's independence. It's also typically used in airports, hotels, and other spaces visited by tourists. So if you have visited Jamaica as a tourist, you've probably heard mento. In my own experience, I've observed that folk songs are known and enjoyed by a wide cross-section of Jamaicans. I can't forget the first time I came to this realization. One of the largest evangelical churches in Kingston was hosting an event called Christ in Art and Jazz. It was a combination of art exhibition and jazz concert. One of the guests was ethnomusicologist Dr. Melvin Butler, who also happens to be an excellent saxophonist. I don't know who had the bright idea that there should be a clash between Dr. Butler and Jamaican musician extraordinaire John Williams. Butler was on his saxophone and Williams was on his violin. Butler was winning. Williams decided to play dirty. He started drawing for Jamaican folk songs in the mento genre. The whole audience transformed. Young and old alike were on their feet singing along with the tunes they knew and loved because they connected them to their Jamaican identity. That was a revelation for me because I never knew until then how powerful a hold these folk songs had on our people. So here is a sample of mento music.
Building your online business?
Okay.
Go to Wix.
It pulled up an ad. Hold on just a second.
Yes. So while we are hanging on to listen to this, maybe what I should have done was to just sing a folk song. Moonshine tonight, come make we dance and sing. Okay, it's going to come now. Here we go.
Make we go down a soul last market. We go buy banana. We have to go get one finger. We go peddler on it. Come we go down, come we go down. Come we go down a soul last market. Come we go down, come we go down. We go buy banana. We have to
Okay. All right, I think we can pause there and move on now. Thank you so much. I guess I should be prepared to start singing or something while we wait. Now, after mento came ska, then rocksteady, then reggae. Without question, the most popular Jamaican genre globally is reggae. Reggae is characterized primarily by the emphasis on the second and fourth beats of the bar, highlighted by guitar and or piano, and the heavy use of the bass guitar and drums. Its global popularity and influence can be attributed to the work of Robert Nesta Marley, who identified with the Rastafari religion. This homegrown religion, born in the 1940s, identified His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia as a black man's messiah. The lyrical content in the early years was what was often referred to as conscious lyrics, affirming the power of the black race and speaking truth to the power of the colonizers. There were songs addressing various topics as the newly formed Rastafari religion believed in the wholeness of life, referred to as livity, with spirituality expressed through every aspect of life. Perhaps because of the militancy reflected through the songs, oppressed and marginalized people all over the world gravitated toward the music. And there is perhaps no country in the world where reggae music is not heard. You probably don't need it, but here is a sample of reggae music. All right. And this one is by Dennis Brown, one of my husband's favorite artists. All right. Thank you, Brian. Great. Yes, I know we want to keep listening, right? But we need to move on. Nyabinghi is actually a Rastafari gathering to celebrate and commemorate significant occasions in praise and worship. For example, the birth of Haile Selassie I is celebrated on July 23rd. They would normally have a Nyabinghi for that. Simply put, it's the worship music of Rastafari. The music is centered around drumming. The drumming pattern is said to mimic the human heartbeat. There are 3 drums used: the bass drum known as the bandu or thunder, the middle pitched called the funde, and the high pitched repeater or kete. The music is said to have originated with the Asante from Ghana and connected to the buru and the kumina, which are also African sourced music genre. And not just music, but traditions. So kumina in particular is used for deep spiritual connections with the African ancestors. Lyrics of Nyabinghi chants often come from Psalms, Isaiah, and other Old Testament scriptures. They also use adapted hymns and choruses from the church. Here is a sample of Nyabinghi music, which isn't chanting hymns or scripture per se, but do we have that one coming up, Brian?
Now we speak of the Nyabinghi.
This was a live performance.
In the meanwhile, I want you all to get your hands together and get yourself in the hills, right? You hear me? Get yourselves in the hills. This is the heartbeat of the music.
I tried to start it at the point where he started singing.
Hear the voice of the Rastaman.
And the whole audience is singing along with me.
Him say, Babylon, your throne down, gone down. Babylon, your throne down.
Right, yes, we can stop it there. And moving on now to revival. The great revival of the 1860s swept through Jamaica, and many of the recently emancipated Africans accepted the message. In their desire to be authentic in their religious expressions, they blended their African spiritual understanding with what the church was teaching. To be fair, they were operating at a disadvantage. Firstly, many of them were pre-literate, as during slavery it was not even legal to teach Africans how to read and write. They were therefore dependent on the few who could do so to read the Bible and interpret it for them. Secondly, they were still not fully welcomed into the established churches and were considered at best second class, even among fellow Christians. They developed two orders during the revival season: the 60 order, also called Zion, and the 61 order, referred to as Pocomania. It is said that they operate along a continuum, with the Zion order being closer to European stroke Christian and the Pocomania being closer to African spirituality. One of the strong features of the revival movement is its music, which utilizes primarily drums and other percussion instruments. Many of the songs are sung in the Jamaican language or with a mixture of English and Jamaican. Even then, the English words are often pronounced in Jamaican ways. Revival music predates the other genres, although it has developed incrementally as it is dynamic just as language is. It is known to have influenced both reggae and Nyabinghi music. I have heard stories about how the nearby revival church in Trenchtown, led by the famous revivalist leader and artist Maliko Capo Reynolds, influenced Bob Marley as he developed his music while living in Trenchtown, and I confirmed that by speaking with his daughter a few days ago. Many Jamaicans, not Bob Marley's daughter, Capo's daughter, many Jamaicans I have discovered straddle between the revival church and one of the other more accepted denominations. My own grandmother, for example, was a staunch member of the Adventist Church, as are many other Jamaicans. The Seventh-day Adventists, I believe, are the second largest denomination in Jamaica at this time, if not the first. In fact, there was even a plaque erected at her church in her honor after she died because of the high regard they had for her and her work among them. However, she was also a powerful, tongue-speaking, trumping, dopey-conquering revivalist. Yes. For many, I'm sorry, I don't know if you followed that. Duppy is a Jamaican word for ghost or spirit. So for many, the established, accepted churches were good for social mobility and acceptance, but the revival spaces were where the power was and where they connected with their African identity. My own upbringing, as I mentioned earlier, did not include exposure to the revival movement. In fact, if I didn't know better, or do I would think there was a deliberate attempt to keep me away from anything like that. Interestingly, I had always been wondering where the Jamaican equivalents to African American spirituals were. I honestly did not know that there was this whole repertoire of songs sung by the revival churches. Typically, the revival songs would only be sung by revivalists and would not be used in the other churches. I visited a revival church once. It was while I was conducting research for my master's thesis entitled Singing a Strange Song in Their Own Land, an exploration of the attitudes of maroon churchgoers in Moortown, Jamaica, towards using their traditional music in church worship. Maroons are known for African retention in language, music, and way of living. In fact, the year when I started my study, they had just received an award of $1 million from UNESCO for preserving their musical heritage. I will never forget the colorful experience I had in one of the Amy Zion churches in Moortown in Portland. That's on the east side of the island. The most outstanding for me musically was a congregation singing, "There is not one broken vessel that God won't mend." Yeah, the sanctuary was transformed into a dance hall. The drummer, a small gray-haired man, banged out the rhythm, which reminded me of the dancehall reggae subgenre, and the people danced with each other in the aisles in wild abandon. It was spectacular. All right, here is a sample of revival music. And while we wait for this, I'll tell you, I tried to set it up, if we could send it, slide the thing along and start it somewhere along there in the middle of yes, there's more than one kind. Yeah. This is a worship service. All right, let us. Yes, see, I'm serious. This is the kind of dancing that was going on when I visited that other church. All right, let's move on. Oh my goodness. But I tell you, I got sucked in listening to their music, watching their many videos. In preparing for this webinar, I discovered that an application was made to UNESCO in 2020 for revivalism to be inscribed on the list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The fact that I, as a resident in Jamaica, am just now becoming aware of this may be indicative of the fact that the typical church person in Jamaica does not pay much attention to the revival movement. In fact, as far as I know, the revival church is not a part of the Jamaica umbrella groups of churches. Of the 4 genres represented here, 3 of them can be said to be connected to movements or organizations that have been marginalized in Jamaican society. This definitely affects how accepted they would be in the worship space. So I will now outline the small survey I conducted in my bid to discover the heart music of the Jamaican worshiper. I needed to hear from the people directly, So first, I sent out a questionnaire using Google Forms, and I received 125 responses. I also backed it up with a YouTube video which had 23 responses and a Facebook post with 41 responses. Those who completed the Google Forms questionnaire were also directed to the YouTube video in case they were not sure what the genre sounded like. 25 of the respondents took advantage of that option. So now this, yeah man, we have time. This video is a sample of the songs that I used to test the responses. And I am going to ask you to listen to this entire video, which I put together. It's 3 minutes and 38 seconds. And I would like you, when you listen to the 4 songs that are there, to indicate which one is your favorite, whether number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4. Yes, go ahead, Brian. Whoa, yeah. Massa got them mind me. I may no need a thing. Him give me rest and him watch over me. I may no need a thing. Water, food, and shelter. Praise the King of Kings. Yeah, yeah. Master God, they mind me. I may no need a thing. Oh, if me never know you, me woulda lost, 'cause you are the way. Jesus, if me never know you,
know joy bells are ringing, happy children are singing. I know where I am going. I know where I am going. I know where I am going. I know joy bells are ringing, happy children are singing. I know where I am going. I know.
All right. So I am going to look in the chat shortly to see what your favorite songs are. Number 3 says, Red crearte música y arte. Okay. And somebody said if I understood the language, I might choose otherwise. But number 3, yes. Okay. Number 1, number 4, reggae at the top, and then mento. Karen, I hear you. Nyabinghi says Deborah or Deborah. Michael, number 1. Mike, number 1. Very interesting. All right. So, now I will tell you, I'm going to look back and hopefully I will get a copy of the chat so that I can see it in more detail, but we have to move on. So those are the songs that the people heard, but they heard the entire songs before responding. So of the 125 who completed the Google Forms, you had 35.2% male, 64.8% female, 8% were under 35, and the majority being between 45 and 74. I tried to get more younger people to respond. I was not successful. I have to do something about that. I need to connect with my young people. So the responses to the main question concerning favorite genre were as follows. So we had Nyabinghi with 7.2%. Then Roots Reggae, 40%. Mento, 20.8%. Revival, 20%. And I Don't Know, 12%. And that's really a high percentage. But then I'm not sure if it's because they couldn't identify the genres or because they honestly just don't know. It could also be because they have other preferences that don't include Jamaican genres. But that option wasn't given to them, so they couldn't say. So they just said, I don't know. After listening, 25 respondents indicated their choice. So out of the 125, 25 of them went back after listening and came back and put their choices there, beside what they had already chosen. So Mento Now was at 16%, Revival 52%, Nyabinghi 20%, and Roots Reggae 12%. Now 16 of that 25 had indicated one genre of preference before listening and changed their preference after listening. Now this could either have been from not knowing how to identify the genres, as I was saying, or because of the specific songs that they were given to choose from. It could even have been the lyrics that influenced them rather than the genre. So here's what happened. 7 of them changed from Mento to Revival. So the Revival number then would go up higher. And the 1 changed from Reggae to Revival. 4 changed from Reggae and 1 from Mento to Nyabinghi. And then 1 changed from Mento to Reggae. So the most significant changes to me were those that changed from Mento to Revival. So the YouTube survey now, on the YouTube survey, which was they only listened, they didn't have even the names of the genres. So Nyabinghi was at 8.6%, Roots Reggae was at 4.3%, Mento 26.1%, and Revival a whopping 60.8%. The Facebook survey, And it was the same video, but I put it up on Facebook. But you know, it's now going to be mainly your friends who are seeing this. Anyway, so Nyabinghi 12.19, Roots Reggae 24.39, Mento 39.02, and Revival 24.39. So the Revival went below the Mento. But one of the conclusions that I have drawn is that Mento and Revival are very closely related. The Revival is like the spiritual version of the Mento. Anyway, I decided to examine the responses of all the persons who had listened to the music before responding. So we had 89 persons in all. So breaking that down now, we have Revival at 41.57, Mento at 29.21, Roots Reggae at 15.73, and Nyabinghi at 13.48. So there again, the Revival is much higher than the others. Overall, an overwhelming majority chose Revival when they had a chance to listen to the music. Just from reading the names of the genres, it was Roots Reggae. However, putting Mento and Revival together, they amounted to an almost equal number of responses as those for Reggae. So I decided now to reach out to the worship leaders to discover what they had to say. And here are the questions I asked and the responses I received. So first question, what are the main genres that you use in worship? And they gave me, let me read it in the order that you would have it there. So this is what they said. Reggae, contemporary Christian, hymns, Jamaican folk or mento, ska, rock, pop, R&B, mild calypso. Not quite sure what the mild calypso is. Calypso is certainly mild in comparison with soca, but that's another story. So question number 2, are there any genres you intentionally avoid? And 7 of the 16 of them said yes, they avoid dancehall, soul, pop, hip hop, rock or heavy metal, reggae, kumina, revival, rock, country and western, poco or barnyard, which is like kumina, kind of. But it's, remember that we said that the revivalists operate on a continuum. So it's those that are further along the continuum away from the European side. Okay, then can you identify 1 or 2 genres that the people respond to best? And they said they respond best to, let me give you in the order that you have it on your screen, mento, reggae, hymns, revival, soca, Jamaican gospel, contemporary Christian music. You notice that some people said that they deliberately avoid revival, and yet here it is. This is one of the genres that they identified that the people respond to best. So that's interesting. Then there was one person, anyway, that's okay. One respondent broke it down based on age groups, but that's a whole nother story again. Then which genre would you most likely choose for songs to God? So 33% said other. Other. Mento or folk, 33%. Revival, 13.3%. Reggae, 13.3%. Nyabinghi, 6.7%. So here is the thing. This other that they're referring to are other genres that are not Jamaican. Yes. Okay. So which genre are you likely to sing songs about God? Other, 42.9%, revival 21.4%, reggae 21.4%, mento 7.1%, Nyabinghi 7.1%. Which genre, Jamaican genre, would you likely choose for collecting offering? Things shifted now. Mento 42.9%. Other went down to 21.4%, reggae 21.4%, revival 14.3%. Then for fellowship songs, mento 50%, and other 35.4%, roots reggae 14.3%. I wonder if I have everything here, because maybe maybe things got shifted, but there you have it. It's kind of, oh, I forget it's not my screen sharing. All right. Then songs for children would be other for 42.9%, mentor 21.4%, reggae 21.4%, revival 14.3%. Then to reach people for Christ, other is again the top 42.9%. Then reggae 35.7%, mentor 14.3%, revival 7.1%. Now, I mean, it's fair to say that these 16 worship leaders cannot possibly represent all the worship leaders in all the 4,000 churches across Jamaica. So it stands to reason that there is lots of room for more investigation, but I think that it's not too far off the mark, that many people are choosing other music. So do you have any concerns about music genre in Jamaican worship? I asked them, and here are the answers. More congregational songs are needed. There is a widespread rejection of most Jamaican genres by pastors unless it is for fundraising, said another. Further knowledge is needed with regard to unholy beats, says another. Then another one said, not all Jamaican Christians are accepting of the Jamaican genres being used in their churches. Congregations don't like to learn new songs, especially different genres. And then there are limited options. And this person gave me a whole paragraph here. I believe the history or original use of some of these genres must be considered. For example, Poco or revival. It has to do with dead yard and raising spirits that are not of God. Also, if the music style is too similar to the secular world, it is hard for people to separate the lyrics and how it makes them feel. And then the good thing is that many of them, not many, yes, people are between yes and maybe when I asked, would you be interested in having a conversation about these matters with other worship leaders? 37.5% said yes, and 56.3% said maybe. So there is room for conversation among most of them. So yes, we are close to the end now. This has been a journey of discovery, and the journey is not yet complete. Let's see it as a project in progress. I'm about to give some of the conclusions I've arrived at, and then I'll be opening the floor for your questions, which I hope I will be able to answer, or we will have a conversation. But before I answer your questions, though, I will be asking you, if you were here early, you would have heard me mention this. I'll be asking you to complete a feedback form, which will give me feedback on the effectiveness of the presentation. Was it helpful for you? As a thank you gift, you'll receive MP3 file for one of the songs on my most recent album, Comical Worship to the Revelation. And I decided to give you the revival one, since revival is the genre that comes out on top among most of the people who listened to the songs. So that's the one that you're getting as a download, as a thank you gift if you fill out the form. So anyway, here are some of my thoughts as I think. When thinking about the genres by name, without listening to samples, reggae comes out on top, with revival and mentor almost tying for second place. However, after listening, revival comes out on top by far, with mentor coming in second. We may conclude that people are not clear on the titles given to the various genres. We may also conclude that some genres are not acceptable. In fact, there may even be a bias or a fear factor involved. And this may lead people to avoid, for example, the revival genre in particular by name. So they avoid it by name. Although the people seem to be drawn primarily to the revival genre, some of the worship leaders are intentionally avoiding it. The jury is still out for me, to be honest, concerning how much the revival genre should be used, given the strong aversion to it by some. Revival and Rastafari have historically been populated by members of the lower classes of the society, and there has been prejudice associated with them. However, the real problem has to do with doctrinal differences. And perhaps the answer, though, is not to avoid using genres associated with them, but to use these genres to build bridges based on the Word of God. Just my thinking. There is a need for biblically based training in worship, both for worship leaders and congregants, so that the focus shifts from the avoidance of a genre to a focus on knowing and celebrating the written and living Word of God. And the final thought before I send you to give that feedback, if worship leaders, this is my conclusion, if worship leaders want to lead Jamaican people in celebrating their faith through songs while avoiding music that comes from questionable sources, then the best choice is perhaps Mento, which is reaching young and old and revivalists and non-revivalists. Okay, so now I will ask you to scan the QR code or visit the site on the screen and insert the code JAM, all caps, when requested, so that you'll receive the free gift of the Revival Medley from the Comical Worship 2 album. As soon as you are finished, just put done in the chat box. Shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes. On the other side, I will give 3 action points and take your questions. So, wow, we have 7 minutes. So let me see. Yes. So there you are. So that's the link in case scanning the QR code is a challenge for you, as it may be for people like me of a certain age. And so that's the link that will take you there. So I'll give you a couple of minutes and then you'll come back. Wonderful. When I see a couple more dones, then we will move on. Let me look in the meantime. Did you ask about social justice? That is songs related to social justice. You said that some musical genres would not be appropriate for ecclesial use, according to some leaders. I asked myself, who can define that music is secular or sacred? What's your own opinion? Given that the category other is statistically quite significant, do you know what people mean by it? Is there one genre or source that stands out? Excellent questions. Very good. All right. I think we have a few people who are done, and I took the opportunity to read. You couldn't see the link. Even, okay, let me see. The link, let me see if I can type it again. All right, so if you were not able, maybe we can send it to you afterwards. Brian, is that a possibility?
Yep, no problem. I'll email it to you, Janet.
Okay. AC. I'm typing it again just in case. Okay, so quick action points. As I had said before, if the worship leaders want to lead Jamaican people in celebrating their faith through songs while avoiding music that comes from questionable sources, then the best choice is Mento, in my opinion, from looking at the whole landscape. Then more Jamaican worship songs are needed. And I didn't even touch the whole matter of language, but we hardly have any worship songs in the Jamaican language, except when you step into the revival space. Then they're singing, like there is one about praying. There is, and then suppose we no meet, suppose we no meet, suppose we no meet, pandit judgment day. You know, I'm trying to remember the other one. Somebody bring me Bible, come give me, make me read one. I know one prayer we pray in a night and we pray in a day. You know, there are all of these songs, but most of the songs that are written in the Jamaican language for church are in the revival movement. What are your thoughts on the comment about the influence of the original use of a song from a particular genre and the difficulty in separating lyrics from secular songs when worshiping? Thank you so much for that question, Karen. I am going to go back to the Q&A, which is where we're supposed to put our questions, but I will come around to that because it's a very, very important question. So, songs related to social justice are definitely, we hardly see this at all. There are, I know, a few Jamaicans online, and I don't know if any of you want to raise any song title that you know of that is a Jamaican worship song that deals with social justice. But the interesting thing is that for me, not using the Jamaican language in the worship space is a matter of social injustice, because we are here is a whole lot of people who this is their first language. In fact, this is the language they think in. And yet, because we feel that it is not appropriate for the church space, then all these people who are supposedly supposed to be in the worship space are being marginalized. They're not getting an opportunity. So yes, that is my thought on it. Okay, so given that, all right, you said that some musical genre would not be appropriate. Who can define that music is secular or sacred? What is my own opinion? My own opinion is that there is no, what is important is what should I say? The spirit of the person who is singing or who is even writing the song. But really, when you come to worship, it's your spirit that you take there. And the origin of many of our hymns is questionable if we're going to look at it that way. So, and you know what is interesting? There is an Anglican hymnal that includes reggae songs written by people who were known to be Rastafari. For example, Peter Tosh wrote a song called Creation. Jah is my keeper. Yeah, first time you wouldn't even have had. So there is growth, there is development taking place. Yes. And then given that the category other, I think it needs further investigation for real, Janet. What is this other that they're talking about? I am assuming that it is other genres that are not Jamaican genres, because the truth is, it is just in very recent times that you can go into many church spaces that are not Pentecostal, that are not revival, and hear Jamaican sounds. It's just not typical. So people have been taught that anything that's connected with Africa, and that is actually from our skin color to the way we speak, to the music that we make, anything connected with Africa is just not good enough, not good. And we need to stay away from it. And unfortunately, many people in Jamaica still have yet to unpack that and to understand how we need to understand ourselves and how God sees us. Okay, so I'm going over into the chat box now to see what else I have missed. Karen was asking about the influence of the original use. I think we do need, if we're worship leaders responsible for choosing songs for people to sing and for guiding the musicians, I think it's important to pay attention to those associations that people have and not to run roughshod over it and say, you need to grow up or whatever it is. That we do need to pay careful attention to how the people feel about it and not push them too fast into something they're uncomfortable with, you know. But it's very interesting that even for reaching people for Christ, so many indicated other, but the next one was reggae. So I suppose we can use reggae to reach people. Yes. And I'm familiar with older composers such as Patrick Pescod, yes, Pascal Jordan, and excuse me, sir, Andrew, Richard Holong is still early, he no late yet, okay? Who's a generation of composers that are coming along now. It's two questions: who is composing, and who are the ones choosing the songs? Because yes, you had Richard Holong is still alive as far as I understand it, but what is his name? And he wrote Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. That one was written in Mento as well. He's gone now, but those were, yes, the older ones. The question is, when people are choosing songs for the congregation to sing, where do they go to source these songs? Well, they are going to the radio, and the radio is going to foreign. A lot of our money for royalties go to foreign composers, foreign songwriters. Noel Dexter, thank you, Karen. And so that is the thing, that Jamaica, known for music, when you step into the church, the leaders are not primarily drawing for this gift that God has given us, which can be used both for our own people and for the entire world. What do you think? Tell me, what do you think? You who are not Jamaican, would you like to hear more Jamaican worship songs? Should I go and tell? Who are they? Well, I'll tell you this. There was a group called Catalyst Crew led by Paul Barkley, and they wrote reggae. Reggae was their thing. And they went to visit another Caribbean island, St. Martin, I hear you, Milner Seifert. They went to St. Martin and they went to visit our church and they were in shock because the leader, like you would say, we're now going to sing from Sankey hymn number 142. So they went up and said, we are going to sing Catalyst number 5, and they were in shock because nobody in Jamaica was paying them that kind of attention. You see, we have to understand, Rastafari and revivalism. As I said before, the people involved in those movements have been marginalized for a long time. Well, Rastafari not so much anymore, and now revival is coming out into the open more, to the point where the Ministry of Culture is submitting an application for revivalism to be listed in the UNESCO list of cultural treasures, global cultural treasures, or whatever it is. I can't remember the name of it, but yes. So it is colonization, Milner, but it is we who don't realize that we have the power, but we still do, though, have to grapple with the doctrinal issues that we are facing as well, and to understand that we need to search scriptures for ourselves. And as Jamaican people, we have the New Testament only. They're working on the Old Testament. We have the New Testament. We've had it since 2012. Sunday, I spoke at a church in downtown Kingston, and so many of the people there they don't own a copy of the Jamaican New Testament. They've never handled it. They just are not interfacing with it, because for so long we were taught that our language is not a language, and at best it's bad. At best it's bad. So we definitely need to keep it out of the holy divine worship space. So there is a lot more work to be done, but non-Jamaicans value the Jamaican music, it seems, much more than many of us in the church spaces, in the official worship spaces. However, let me tell you, there is the one I mentioned who, the person I mentioned who applied for revival genre to be added to the list of genres out there. He goes by, his stage name is Kukudu. And they invite him almost every year now, since they've discovered him, to perform on the national stage when we are celebrating independence. Kukudu is there, and the whole place is singing along with him. We realize, just as I said before, that there are many people who are straddling between whatever the accepted worship space that they use and the revival space. And there needs to be more communication, more connection. Yes. I don't know if anyone has a question that they would want to actually speak out. Is that a possibility, Brian?
Yeah, I can unmute people, so you can speak if you want to put in the chat. If you'd like to say your question out loud, that's possible. One of the things that I've been wrestling with for years, but this presentation really once again made it clear to me, is that as I watched you talk about all of the genres, I started thinking about how often those genres get conflated, which seems to have happened in people's minds when you were talking about at first when they without listening, they just said this genre is the most important or most used or whatever, but then when they listened to it, they changed. And it's like, why is that? And I wonder how much genre blending is happening. And if that's being used as a mechanism to make certain things more palatable to people who may not like a certain genre or associate it with, worldly things or whatever, like, where it's like almost revival, but not really, because it's like kind of ska or,
Yes. And I'll tell you what happened. One story time. One Saturday night, we were preparing for worship the next day, worship team, and we were doing Shout to the Lord. And I think it may have been the bass guitarist who started the whole thing of shifting the song from its original format into reggae. And so the bass guitarist, then the rhythm guitarist, the drummer, one by one, and we had an amazing time of worship that night preparing. So we looked at each other and we're like, are we going to do this tomorrow in church? And somebody who felt that, well, their back is broad, so they can take the licks, said, yes, let's do it. And worship was off the chain the next day. No, my church was very conservative up to that time. And going home, I asked my mother if she liked the worship and especially how we did Shout to the Lord. And she was like, yes, it was great. It was wonderful. She loved it. I said, you know what we did though? And she said, what? I said, we did Shout to the Lord in reggae. And she looked at me like, because up to that time, reggae was a no-no to mention for her at any rate, and many people in her age group. And then she just kind of shook her head and said, I don't care what it was wonderful. Yeah. So it just shows that the name might be a problem, but when they experience it, it's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that is buzzing around in my head right now is as like our generation it's such an interesting time to be alive, because we're having these decolonial, post-colonial conversations, right? And while also naming genres and doing the kind of historical categorization of our folk musics in various places, while those things are being manipulated, covered up, changed by the globalization, right? Like you talked about, like the foreign influences on your radio stations.
Yes.
So it's this like it's at times at odds, and at times creating something new and beautiful, between this kind of hyper localization of, like, I noticed on your last pie chart, Nyabinghi disappeared. Like people weren't bringing it up. It just wasn't on the pie chart anymore.
I think they just don't know the name of it.
Okay.
And they also don't know how to say this is Nyabinghi, but that when they feel it, they feel it. It's so even my sample, because I used those samples because I was putting it on YouTube, I didn't want to have any issues with copyrights, etc. So those were my songs, and I am not an authentic Nyabinghi musician, so therefore it's not going to sound like the guy we played, Ras Michael, who, by the way, has accepted Christ and is now preaching Christ. At the time he was Rastafari in terms of, and actually, believing what most people think that all Rastafari believe, but all of them are not the same. That's a whole nother story again. Yes.
What? Everyone doesn't believe the same thing? That's crazy.
Isn't it?
Good thing Christianity is not that way.
Just to kind of wrap it up and bring it back around to full circle, that story I started with of the growth and development of that one song, mine, Jesus is mine, which obviously came to us from overseas, probably North America. And then we worked with it, massaged it, brought it into something that we could identify with. It is something we do. And it gives me hope that soon, well, that one day, things are going to line up the way they ought to, where Jamaican worshipers are worshiping as Jamaicans and not making any apology for being who we are. Yeah.
Thank you. That felt like the end. That's such a beautiful and folks, if you have if you leave this webinar, or if you're watching the recording and you have questions, feel free to email the office at the Hymn Society, and we can certainly follow up with Jo-Ann.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the next time I get to see you. I don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah.
But this was so rich.
Well, I'll tell you, you guys have sent me into research mode. So I am going to dive deeper into all of this. And I'm typing here, just thank you all for listening and responding. This has been a good experience for me, just the whole journey. And thank you.
Well, if your research brings you to some interesting places, which I'm sure it will, you are welcome to share those results with us anytime. You just let us know.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Bless you. Yes.
All right.
And for those, I'm sorry, who
No, go ahead.
are watching online who didn't attend live, they can still fill out the questionnaire and get to download their MP3 file. And yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And take care, everyone. We'll have another webinar soon. So check out the rest of this series. And you can sign up for the full series and catch all the recordings as well. So if you've missed one that you really want to see, please let us know and we'll make that happen.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Worship, Lord, we worship Him.